Welcome to Davis Wade Stadium on the campus of Mississippi State University. We're Steve. It is game day again. Mississippi State starts a 3-game homestand, which will determine, as Coach Joe Moorhead has said, and players this week, how the legacy of the 2019 season will be written.
It's true, David, and it seems like forever since we've been here. We've had just one home game since September 21st. We're going to get 3 in about 15 days or so. And you're right, that is the defining stretch in this season, David. I mean, it has been a very frustrating season. You've had the Tutorgate 10, you've had some injuries to deal with, but the bottom line is the Bulldogs control their own destiny right here at home.
News items from today. Of course, Mississippi State does, it's not been announced yet. We expect that Tommy Stevens will be getting the start today, but Coach Joe Moorhead, who all last season and most of this season said he's a one-quarterback coach, he's kind of showing a little bit of willingness to flex on that topic, perhaps to get the use of both his talents out there between Tommy Stevens and Garrett Schrader, perhaps to the curveball, or just to kind of keep guys healthy here for the stretch run.
And, David, we kind of mentioned this on Monday, too. I think Joe enjoys being a little bit coy about who might start, even though the offense is not tremendously different from a play-calling standpoint. But with Tommy Stevens, you get the full complement of the playbook. With Garrett Schrader, you're running about a sliver of the playbook, and he's been successful at times with that and will be a great quarterback in the future. But I think Joe is kind of enjoying a little bit of this cat and mouse game with the opponents.
Of course, Alabama's not playing cat and mouse. They really have to be serious about their quarterback situation. At this point, we do not expect Tua Tagovailoa to play this game, or certainly not the entire game. We just don't know because Coach Saban is going to leave this to a game-time decision, just like State is. I don't think this is a case of the coaches trying to be coy with each other. They just really are making some decisions.
Well, and I think in Alabama's case, it's much different. Their season kind of boiled down to last week. I mean, Tua had to play that game in order for Alabama to have a chance to win the SEC West. Those chances now remote at best. And so you begin to think, okay, what are they playing for down the stretch? Well, they still have a lot to play for, David, because they could be an at-large team in the FBS playoffs. So they will come out here ready to play, even though on a cold day like today, it's not a good day to have a bum ankle. And that's what Tua's got, so we'll see what happens. And the reports out of Tuscaloosa this week where he was somewhat guarded in practice, and they didn't do a whole lot. He practiced one day in tennis shoes, and so I'm with you. I don't think he plays. I don't know how much that matters. That we'll find out a little bit later today.
Talking to defensive players this week, they acknowledge the matchup difficulty. Alabama, the best receiver corps in the nation, guys with speed, guys with strength, guys with skill. But talking to Jaquarius Landers and others, they seem to kind of welcome the challenge. Athletes like to test each other against athletes, and they held up pretty well last year against a great receiver corps as well.
They did, David, and I thought this secondary played pretty well against LSU, save maybe 2 plays in that ball game. They did a pretty good job keeping that explosive offense kind of bottled up. They'll need a similar effort today, but they must have a better contribution on offense than we had against LSU.
Yes, talking to defensive players, they do say that the best help they can get, obviously, is the offensive team playing like they have, not just the last week with the Arkansas game, but really starting in the second half of the Texas A&M game, where the Bulldogs, regardless of quarterback, whether Garrett Schrader, Tommy Stevens, began moving the ball well. Kylan Hill has gone back to becoming a power runner again, and now at just over 1,000 yards. If he continues this pace, he could set the season record that's held by Anthony Dixon, set 10 years ago, particularly if the Bulldogs qualify for bowl eligibility. But offensively, what do the Dogs have to do to attack this year's Alabama defense, which is maybe not up to the par of recent years?
Yeah, they're not an elite unit like they have been, and that's not any criticism. They're a little more mortal this year, David. But, yeah, State's got to come in and run the football effectively to kind of keep those safeties honest. Because if Tommy Stevens can make some plays downfield against a very athletic Alabama secondary, it opens things up for Kylan Hill. By that same token, Kylan Hill's got to be effective. You've got to be able to be balanced on offense. You get one-dimensional against a team with athletes like Alabama has, it makes for a long day.
Mississippi State does expect to be full strength in the offensive line again with Stuart Reese back in the fold at right guard. But, with the injury situation, they've used it to develop some depth there with Quinston Sharp and others. So you feel better about them going into the second half. Defensive secondary, some guys like C.J. Morgan and others who've been banged up are expected to play today. Of course, you mentioned Cam Dantzler and others should be available as well. So this is about as full strength as you can expect to be at this point of a season after a long campaign.
Minus the Tutorgate 10. We don't expect any of those guys to play, but you mentioned from a health standpoint, State is in pretty good condition. Maury Smitherman, of course, lost for the year, and some other guys a little bit nicked up, but that's life and times in the SEC. But, we feel like that we'll be a pretty healthy team today. We'll see what happens. But, again, to go ahead and get it out of the way, we expect the list this week and next week. And then finally, after the Abilene Christian game, David, no more suspensions or any more reductions of eligibility for anybody involved in the Tutorgate 10, and thankfully that'll finally be behind us.
All right, this was a big visit weekend for prospects as well. Obviously, State expects a big crowd. The 11 o'clock kickoffs are going to really cut into that from both sides, but that's, I think, State's fifth 11 o'clock or Central Time kick. We're not getting any favors in that regard, but it will warm up some as it gets out there. What do you know about today's recruiting plans?
Well, of course, they extend a lot of invitations. The early kick always is a detriment to that. The usual suspects will have a lot of the commitments here. A lot of guys from Louisiana making the trip up. It's also a tougher day, too, because, Ole Miss has the night game and also a top 10 opponent coming in. A lot of people want to see LSU play, and so as a result, you're kind of going to split some of the talent. There'll be some players that make a double dip. They'll be here for a ball game. They'll leave there to go up to Ole Miss. But, yeah, it'll be a good group. I don't know that it'll be a great group that you normally have, like in 2017 when State played Alabama. You had about 200 prospects here. It'll be a lot less than that today.
All right, Steve, and be remiss if we don't give you a chance to get a plug in for Stark Villains out in time for your holiday shopping.
And it's doing great, David. The response has been tremendous. Fans, very well received. And this is the Mississippi State book for the holiday season, and had some great signings this week down in Jackson, Lemuria, and then last night at Maroon & Company and Book Martin Cafe. I'll be back at Book Martin Cafe once we're finally done with post-game today and meeting with some fans there. And then it'll be a busy week. I'll be in the Mississippi Delta Monday and Wednesday at Rouville and Cleveland, and then Cleveland and Rouville in that order, and then right back in Starkville for the big weekend. And so it's a busy time, but it's been a really fun time.
So that's our update here in pregame. We'll be getting news, obviously, on suspensions and injuries shortly. We'll be posting those on Gene's page. We have our game thread going with Robbie Falk taking care of that. To Paul Jones, we're keeping track of the recruiting visits today. Steve, you'll be on the sideline shooting the game, and Mike Neal will be writing our flash story. And I'll be putting the game story out there as well as working on social media. So a busy day here at Bulldog Country, but the home stretch is here. Mississippi State, with its 2019 fate still to be written, it begins today. For Steve Robertson, this is David Murray.